All right. Welcome to the first episode of The Hidden Chasm. I'm Bo Motlop and my co-host Josh Smith, and we're joined here with Natasha Walton, a product executive with 20 years of experience building commercial solutions. Natasha, it is great to meet you. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you again for having me. So, a little bit about me. I moved to San Francisco from Philadelphia after college. I had been intending to use my urban studies degree, but happened to graduate into a recession in 2008. And so a lot of the paths I had been planning to pursue didn't end up being open to me after all. So I ended up joining an early stage startup and got totally hooked and enamored with the tech industry. And within a couple of years, found my way into product management. That's really where I felt I could have the biggest impact. And let's see, I started on the consumer side, first working in social and mobile gaming, and then found my way over to B2B. So initially was the first head of product for a company called Livefire that at the time was the largest enterprise commenting platform on the web, as well as a social curation tool that publishers and brands used in order to capture the earned media that they were garnering around the social web and repurpose it on their owned and operated property. We were acquired by Adobe about 4 years after I joined, or we were part of the Adobe Experience Cloud, their marketing arm of software. And more recently, I joined a company called Maverick as the VP of product, another social marketing company in the influencer marketing space. And Maverick also has merged with a company called Later, a social media management tool, and is now under the Later banner and brand with their influencer marketing platform. So that's just a little bit about my background.
Very cool. Urban studies and then product management from there. That's quite the journey.
Yeah, it's funny. I found that even though I didn't end up pursuing a career where I was creating spaces for people in a physical environment, that ultimately I could apply that energy and design charrette type of experience towards creating digital spaces.
Natasha, have you seen anything about this hidden chasm concept that we've been putting out into the world at all? Happy to give a quick overview of that if you haven't really been, because we've only put like one article out there so far, but it's an interesting topic that we're exploring right now. I'll go ahead and tell. So basically, what we're looking at, and really the point of this podcast over the next however many episodes we get through, is we're exploring this phenomenon we've noticed when you're a startup and when you're an early business going through like the good years. You make a lot of quick decisions. You've been through it, it sounds like, where you're more interested in just immediately getting some growth and some traction. And so things like, how's the organization structured? Are we making shortcuts in terms of tech debt and legacy technology? Do we have a 10-year strategy? Like those things aren't necessarily high on the agenda, and that's normal. But what we found is that these companies in the $10 to $200 range, as they get to year 15, these types of decisions, and having not addressed those over time because they didn't really need to, tend to sneak up on them. And it becomes this brick wall that they sort of slam into that seems like a surprise to them. And it's usually precipitated by a lot of market pressure, new competitors coming in and making it very difficult for them. And because it's something they didn't see coming, even though we've found a lot of potential indicators that I think you could see that it could be coming, it's hidden. That's where the name The Hidden Chasm comes from. And so we're really interested in learning more about companies that are experiencing this or have experienced it, and just kind of curious about your journey and if you've run into this kind of thing as well.
Absolutely. And I did check out your blog post and it immediately resonated with me. I think it's an interesting title as well, that it's this chasm, but it's hidden and you might not realize that it's there until you're already in it.
Right.
And of course, finding yourself in a chasm can feel like an uphill battle and it can feel intimidating. And I think that socializing more awareness about the issues of accumulated tech debt and what types of strategies companies can employ in order to improve it, and also ways to notice it or notice it sooner, I think is really valuable.
Have you been at a company where you saw those signals? You found that they were in a hidden chasm?
Absolutely. So there are a couple of different environments that I've experienced over the years in relation to tech debt. So one has been an approach where essentially every couple of years you are replatforming. And so you do have a long-term vision, but you are kind of managing tech debt alongside new features on a very ongoing basis. And so while every company has some amount of tech debt, it's not as though getting it down to zero is feasible or desirable, that there's kind of that proactive strategy in place. And then I've also been in the experience where I've found myself kind of in that moment that you're describing, where I thought it was actually going to be a scenario where we could address some of the developer velocity concerns. That was kind of my first cue. I'm wondering why it's taking so long in order to build new stuff. And I thought it was maybe more about like retooling processes, retooling the way that you organize teams, and taking more of a product management or program management approach to it. And even though that was maybe part of what was contributing to it, ended up finding as the months went on that the issue was a bit more deeply rooted than I had initially surmised.
Sounds like you guys were thinking through like an agile transformation or something like that.
Exactly. And I think even getting to that point, I see now retrospectively, since I was going through it for the first time, took me a little bit longer that first time than it would the next time, perhaps. But you're exactly right. I think that the agile transformation was something that was called for alongside somewhat of a technical transformation as well.
One of the indicators we see a lot before it even gets to the agile transformation piece is the company begins to notice customer retention issues. Is that something you were seeing as well?
Yes, I would say that wasn't the first thing
Okay.
noticed. I'd say that wasn't ultimately what kind of like led us to understand what was going. I think that the developer velocity ability to execute against plans that we had as a product team, as an organization, we of course have exciting ambitions, and then end up scoping it and being like, wait, what? I don't know if that's going to work. Why is it going to take that long? And then going under the hood and realizing that maybe the platform hasn't had the opportunity to be replatformed in a while. And you've just kind of been building and building and making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger without really necessarily having a technical plan for where you're going with that, or releasing features that might not be fully baked, having thought through every part of what makes a feature full-fledged. And if you have enough of those, that ends up every time you touch a piece of code, something breaks, and having that working with a more brittle structure where then it becomes less possible to build on those future dreams that you have and that you want to be sharing with your current customers so that you can keep retention up.
So, in the experience where you were focused on sort of agile transformation elements of it, the product management sort of elements that you could control, did you find that that was helping, or how did that impact the problem space as you guys were moving through it when you began to bring those types of changes to the conversation?
I would say that introducing an agile transformation was supportive for our organization overall and for helping us to essentially be able to run parallel priorities. Previously, there had been an approach where essentially you say, okay, what are we going to work on? We're going to get that totally scoped, we're going to execute on it. And then when we're done, we're going to figure out what's next.
Right.
And in that type of environment, I think it's hard to say, okay, let's put 35% of our resources towards paying down some technical debt. And every sprint, we're going to pull in a couple of stories about that. And we're just going to steadily make progress on that alongside 50% new features and then 15% bugs, and kind of creating the conditions to empower product managers as well as tech leads or engineering managers to be doing both, paying down tech debt and building new features.